When the Great Depression swept across America in 1929, it didn't crash like thunder, it fell like a long, tired sigh. The noise of the cities dimmed, the factories quieted, and the rhythm of daily life slowed to a crawl, as though the entire nation was holding its breath. Men who once whistled on their way to work found themselves staring at the floor, tracing the cracks in the dust with their boots, wondering where the next meal would come from. Some packed a few belongings into worn sacks. Others simply walked away from their homes with nothing at all. The roads were long and empty, the fields vast and silent. But somewhere beyond the horizon came the low, mournful whistle of a train sound that seemed to promise movement, freedom, or maybe just a chance to disappear. And so, the first hobos began to follow the rails. They walked for miles beside the tracks, their silhouettes stretched thin against the dying light, until the sound of steel and smoke became their only companion. The trains roared past like iron beasts, carrying other men's goods and other men's luck, while the drifters waited for the right moment to jump. Some failed, some succeeded, and those who managed to cling to the side of a freight car felt the cold wind whip against their faces, like a baptism into a new kind of life. The landscape rolled by in shades of brown, and greyhounds half asleep, barns collapsing into the earth, people moving slower than the seasons. At night, the hobos would gather around small campfires, under bridges, or in hollow fields, where the smoke curled lazily toward a sky that seemed endless. They shared stories of where they came from, though most of them didn't matter anymore. In that world of hunger and dust, identity was a luxury. They cooked beans in tin cans, passed around cheap coffee brewed in soot-blackened pots, and stared into the flames as though the fire could answer the questions that words could not. Sometimes they laughed. More often, they simply listened to the night, the soft rustle of wind through grass, the distant clatter of a passing train, the quiet murmur of men learning to be invisible. The rails beneath their feet shimmered faintly in the moonlight, endless lines stretching across a country that had forgotten how to feed its own people. Yet there was a strange beauty in that silence, a rhythm to the stillness, as if history itself was whispering that not all survival requires victory. The hobos had no money, no homes, no certainty, and yet they carried on, bound together by the simplest human code. Share what you have, take only what you need, move forward when you must. For them, each sunrise was an act of defiance, each train whistle a reminder that the world still moved, even when it had stopped caring. The rails sang softly through the fog, and in that mournful song, thousands of broken men found a fragile kind of peace, of surrender, of being no one, and yet part of something greater than themselves. History would remember them as wanderers, outcasts, drifters, but to the night, to the wind, to the humming steel beneath their feet, they were simply human beings, learning to rest in the slow rhythm of survival. The mornings of the Great Depression carried a quiet, weary rhythm, where the streets themselves seemed to sigh under the weight of empty stomachs and aching feet. Along city sidewalks and in town squares, long bread lines formed like rivers of shadow, men and women standing shoulder to shoulder, waiting for a loaf, a scrap, a kind word, anything that would remind them they had not been completely forgotten. Shoes were tattered and thin, soles worn down by miles of wandering or by years of labor that no longer paid. And yet the people shuffled forward with a strange dignity, faces lined with quiet resignation and faint sparks of stubborn hope. The air smelled of cold iron and smoke, of bread being baked in distant kitchens, and the occasional tang of despair that seemed to cling to every corner. Children clung to their mothers' skirts, eyes wide with both curiosity and fear, watching as strangers became a small, moving community bound not by wealth, but by the shared hunger that knotted their lives together. Men with empty pockets talked softly, exchanged small smiles or stories of past work, and sometimes a laugh would slip through the cracks of despair, small but defiant, like a candle flickering against a storm. The hobos, moving silently along the outskirts of these breadlines, watched and learned. They carried nothing but their few possessions and their wits, observing the subtle dance of human survival. A hand reached out to receive a loaf. A hat was passed to gather coins. Eyes met across the distance, and the world seemed at once unbearably cruel and quietly tender. In those streets, one could sense a rhythm, the monotony of waiting, the soft shuffle of worn shoes, the barely audible whispers of stories passed in hushed tones, all combining into a slow, hypnotic cadence that seemed to mirror the movement of the trains the hobos would later ride. Every cracked sidewalk, every soot-darkened doorway, every leaning sign above a shop carried the imprint of invisible lives, and the hobos, moving between cities and towns, absorbed it all, carrying these fragments of ordinary struggle like silent offerings to the roads. The breadlines stretched not just through the streets, but into memory itself, embedding lessons about patience, endurance, and the quiet heroism of those who endured without complaint. The sun would rise higher, indifferent and warm, illuminating the broken shoes and the thin hands reaching for sustenance. And in that slow illumination, the mundane tragedy of daily survival became almost beautiful, a pattern of human resilience, so quiet and steady that it could lull the mind into reflection. For the hobos, these lines were more than scenes of suffering. They were classrooms where the unspoken rules of generosity, humility, and patience were etched into their consciousness. And when the sun finally dipped behind the gray horizon, leaving the streets in twilight, the breadlines dissolved into shadows, and the silent walkers would continue along the rails, the memory of the waiting crowd following them like a quiet lullaby of endurance, a reminder that even when the world offers nothing, humanity endures, step by careful step, along roads paved with patience, shoes worn thin, and hearts that refuse to break. The rails stretched endlessly across the heart of America, like silver veins pulsing with the quiet energy of possibility. And to the hobos of the Great Depression, they were more than steel and wood. They were lifelines, conduits of a fragile hope that shimmered just beyond the reach of despair. Each morning, the faint whistle of a distant train seemed to carry a promise, a subtle signal that movement was possible even when the world had ground to a halt, that there was somewhere to go even if the destination remained unknown. Men with hollow cheeks and sunken eyes would gather near sidings and empty freight yards, peering down the tracks as if their very survival depended on the rhythm of the steel wheels, listening for the low, rolling thunder that would announce their next journey. Some trains were fast, dangerous, indifferent to the small human figures clinging to their sides. Others crawled slowly across the plains, and these became the preferred companions of those who had learned to balance patience with courage. Boarding a freight car was not merely an act of travelette, was a test of nerve, of instinct, a silent pact between man and metal, where a misstep could mean injury, arrest, or disappearance into the foggy landscape. And yet, despite the risks, the rails offered something no breadline or shelter could: movement, autonomy, a fleeting taste of freedom, a whisper that life could still be navigated on one's own terms. The hobo clung to the side of the car, leather and wool scraped by jagged metal, hair whipping in the wind, feeling simultaneously terrified and alive as the train groaned and lunged forward, carrying him across vast stretches of countryside that no one else would notice. Towns passing like ghostly stage sets, the landscape a blur of muted browns and grays. Inside these rattling, hollow cars, the world outside seemed distant. The clatter of wheels became a steady heartbeat, the rocking motion a lullaby for the body and the mind, in turn, began to fill with quiet observations: the skeletal trees along the track, the plumes of distant smoke, the lone farmhouses whose occupants had long since learned to offer a tin of beans or a friendly nod to travelers. At night, when the train slowed near small towns, the hobos would slip quietly from the cars, seeking shelter beneath bridges or in abandoned barns. And in the dim glow of moonlight, they would tend small fires, their eyes reflecting both exhaustion and a strange serenity. The train carried more than boding. It carried stories, whispers of shared struggle, and the faint pulse of a nation that refused to stop entirely. Each whistle that pierced the fog seemed to sing a song of patience and perseverance, a quiet chorus that reminded these wandering souls that even when money was gone and certainty was shattered, motion itself could become salvation. The rails became both a stage and a teacher, their unending lines instructing the drifters' careful art of survival, in listening to the world's hidden rhythms, and in finding dignity within the rhythm of movement. And as the train rattled on into the dark, leaving smoke curling like a ghost across the landscape, the hobos leaned against the steel, feeling the hum resonate through their bones. And for a moment, the endless wandering felt less lonely, less harsh, as if the rails themselves had become a companion, a moving thread connecting them to the heart of a country that was suffering, dreaming and waiting, one quiet mile at a time. The world of the hobo was filled with silent conversations, invisible maps, and a secret grammar that only those who rode the rails could understand, etched softly in chalk on fences, posts, and the sides of buildings, small symbols that told stories of kindness, danger, food, or shelter, written for no one but those who would come after. A simple arrow could point toward a safe place to sleep. A cross might warn of unfriendly towns. A smiley face or a pair of dots under a roof could mean a warm meal awaited nearby. And every mark carried the weight of humanity, quietly preserved in the midst of despair. These tiny messages became a lifeline, a code that allowed men to navigate a country that often ignored their existence. And for the wandering hobos, reading them was like listening to whispers of the earth itself, a steady voice guiding them through the emptiness. Each mark was painstakingly observed, memorized, and respected, erasing one, misinterpreting another, could mean the difference between a night spent under the stars or a night spent in cold and danger. In towns they passed through, men would crouch low, chalk in hand, and with deliberate strokes leave their advice for the next traveler loaf. Here, a warning, there creating an invisible network of guidance that stretched from the industrial north to the dusty south, a map made of subtle kindness. These symbols were more than utility. They were art, poetry, and the quiet assertion of presence in a world that had erased their names. A triangle drawn under a bridge might mark a safe place to rest, and beside it, a short note, "Kind man, here." Don't steal. The repetition of these symbols carved a rhythm into the landscape, a gentle heartbeat for those attuned to its pulse. Children sometimes watched with wide eyes as strangers sketched shapes on walls and posts, never understanding the full meaning, yet feeling a strange reassurance in the silent communication. For the hobos, each chalk mark became a companion, a guide, a reminder that no matter how invisible they felt to the larger society, there was a thread of connection, a network of empathy stretching silently across states, towns, and fields. It was in these moments of quiet observation that the tired wanderers learned patience, humility, and attentiveness, reading the subtle language of chalk with the same reverence others read books or maps. Each symbol carried a story, a warning, or an invitation. And as the trains carried men from one horizon to the next, the chalk marks left behind seemed to whisper across the rails, an unbroken chain of human experience, guiding, protecting, and reminding them that even in the monotonous rhythm of hunger, cold, and endless walking, there was care, there was foresight, and there was an enduring, almost sacred quiet in the way people looked after one another. And in the dim light of dawn or dusk, when the shadows lengthened and the landscape was painted in soft grays and muted golds, the hobos would pause to study these messages, letting them sink slowly into memory, a gentle, almost hypnotic reassurance that even the world's most forgotten travelers could speak and be heard in silence, their survival written delicately in chalk on walls that would outlast even their footsteps. As night fell over the endless rails, the hobos, tired, hungry, and dust-coated from the day's wandering, gathered quietly beneath bridges, beside abandoned barns, or in the hollowed shadows of forgotten fields, where the soft glow of a single fire could seem like an entire universe. The first campfire was always a modest affair, a small circle of stones, a few dry twigs, a spark struck from flint or friction. And yet, from that humble beginning rose a warmth that did more than chase away the cold, held back the weight of isolation, the crushing loneliness of men who had nowhere else to belong. Around the flickering flames, faces emerged, from shadow eyes sunken, yet glimmering in the golden light, hands reaching out to adjust a log, to hold a tin cup of coffee, to share the last bit of bread scavenged from a distant town. Conversation was sparse. Often it was unnecessary. The crackle and pop of fire became their shared language, a slow and rhythmic symphony that allowed thought, reflection, and memory to drift gently into one another. Some hummed low tunes learned from rail yards and sidings. Others watched the smoke curl upward into the cold night sky, tracing constellations they barely recognized, feeling the vastness of the world at once comforting and terrifying. The campfire was a stage for small acts of humanity, a quiet sharing of beans boiled in a battered can, a tender adjustment of a threadbare coat to ward off the chill, the passing of a cigarette from one hand to another, each gesture heavy with unspoken camaraderie. In that circle of orange light, men became brothers without names, their stories intertwining in silence, forming bonds stronger than any wage or home could ever provide. The surrounding darkness was deep, yet the fire created a sphere of intimacy where despair softened just enough for hope to seep in, where the monotony of travel, hunger, and uncertainty could be soothed by the simple ritual of tending the flames. Even the distant sound of a freight train rattling over the tracks became a lullaby rather than a threat, a rhythm to accompany the low murmurs of conversation and the occasional quiet laugh. Children or stray dogs sometimes appeared at the edges of the circle, drawn by light and warmth, and were welcomed with gentle nods, careful not to disturb the fragile peace. The fire illuminated not just faces, but the quiet dignity etched into every line and callus, every torn coat and worn shoe, testament to endurance, resourcefulness, and the subtle poetry of survival. As embers faded into the night, and the moon rose pale and watchful over the endless tracks, the first campfire left behind more than warmth. It left a memory, a template for every night that followed, a ritual that could calm restless minds and soothe aching bodies. In the hush between crackle and silence, the hobos of the Great Depression discovered that even in the most barren and hopeless moments, there could be beauty, ritual, and connection, hypnotic rhythm that echoed the slow, patient cadence of life itself, teaching them that survival was not just about motion or food, but about the shared, quiet moments that stitched together a tapestry of humanity beneath the wide, indifferent sky. Inside the grand halls and shadowed chambers of the nation's palaces and mansions, life moved with a quiet monotony that few outside their walls could imagine. A world where velvet drapes muffled sound, crystal chandeliers reflected light without ever altering the slow, dusty rhythm of time. And the day began not with the urgency of survival, but with the soft, deliberate rituals of those born to privilege. Kings and nobles rose to a world wrapped in cushions, carpets, and corridors whose only complaint was the slow accumulation of dust. A gentle reminder that even opulence could not escape the passage of hours. Servants moved like ghosts along polished floors, carrying trays of tepid tea or half-forgotten letters, the soft shuffle of their steps echoing in empty halls, marking a rhythm as subtle and hypnotic as the tick of an ancient clock. Outside, the city roared or slept, indifferent to the lives cocooned in such quiet, and yet within these walls, time itself seemed both expansive and suffocating, stretching endlessly as if to test the patience of the dwellers. In chambers lined with ornate furniture, kings dusted golden candelabras, traced the spines of leather-bound books, and leaned against velvet curtains, their thoughts drifting like the particles floating lazily in the sunlight. There was a strange poetry in the repetition, the brushing of hands over polished wood, the folding of silken garments, the sipping of wine that carried no urgency, the turning of pages that spoke of conquests long past, even the smallest details, footsteps along marble, the faint creak of a door, the sigh of a curtain in the breeze became markers of time, gentle enough to lull a mind into contemplation, slow enough to hypnotize. Letters were opened and reread, some containing trivial matters of state, others messages from distant relatives whose lives felt more like echoes than reality. And each word fell into the quiet chambers like dust settling on untouched furniture, weightless yet undeniably present. The gardens outside, visible through tall windows, swayed lazily in the afternoon sun, each leaf reflecting a story of seasons passing unnoticed, a mirror to the slow, careful steps of men who bore crowns but carried hidden burdens of expectation and ritual. In such spaces, the mundane became sacred, the brushing of hair, the polishing of shoes, the adjustment of a tie or cuff. Each act repeated enough times to become almost meditative, a quiet anchor in a world too vast to grasp. And when the evening descended, velvet shadows stretching across polished floors, the hush of the chambers deepened, footsteps slowed, and the distant glow of lamps illuminated nothing but the gentle dust motes dancing in the air. Here, within the opulent silence, kings slept not just in beds of silk, but in rhythms of habit, in the subtle music of monotony, and in that stillness. They were no different from the men who rode freight trains or waited in breadlines bound by time, existence, and the quiet, inevitable passage of life itself, drifting into dreams in a chamber of velvet, where the world's clamor could not reach, and history itself seemed to pause for a moment of soft, hypnotic reflection. In the dim glow of flickering candlelight, where shadows stretched across the walls of endless corridors and the scent of parchment mingled with the dust of ages, the scribe bent over his work, quill scratching softly against brittle pages, each stroke a slow testament to a world few would ever see. His back ached, shoulders stiff from hours of bending. Yet he continued in silence, eyes narrowing at each line of ink, tracing letters that would record the names of kings, the dates of battles, the mundane details of decrees that seemed monumental only to those who wrote them. Outside, the wind whispered through the empty streets, the city either asleep or indifferent to the quiet labor of a man who was invisible by design, and the room itself seemed to pulse with the slow rhythm of the scribe's breathing, the scratching of quill against paper becoming a soft metronome marking the passage of hours. His hands were stained with ink, fingers trembling slightly from fatigue, and each word seemed to weigh heavier than the last. The monotony of repetition stretching time until it felt elastic, as though the night would never end and the candle would burn forever. Occasionally, he would pause, tilt his head back, and yawn, a sound swallowed by the cavernous hall, unnoticed by the walls, the floor, or the empty chairs that lined the room. And yet, in that repetition, in that slow, almost hypnotic rhythm, there was a meditative quality. The world outside could rage, collapse, or burn. But here, in this tiny, dimly lit chamber, history was being meticulously preserved, line by painstaking line. Outside the window, shadows of trees swayed in the moonlight, and the occasional creak of a distant door reminded him that he was alone in his task, yet connected to the pulse of civilization in a way that no loud proclamation ever could. Each page he finished became a bridge between the present and the past, a quiet whisper carried forward to the future. though he could never know if anyone would ever read it. The smell of ink and paper was thick, almost oppressive, yet comforting in its constancy. A companion to the hum of the candle flame and the occasional scratch of nib against parchment. Time here was measured not in minutes, but in sentences, in paragraphs, in the slow accumulation of recorded memory. And though the work seemed endless, the scribe persisted, knowing that his efforts, unnoticed as they were, anchored the stories of men, kingdoms, and ordinary lives to a permanence beyond immediate comprehension. In the stillness of the night, he yawned again, shoulders sagging slightly, and leaned closer to his work. The quill dancing across the page with a rhythm as subtle and hypnotic as the heartbeat of the world outside. The candle flickered, the shadows stretched longer, and in that quiet, repetitive labor, there was a beauty soft, understated, and almost soporific that reminded him, and anyone who might someday glimpse his records, that history was not only made in grand battles or fiery speeches, but also in the unremarkable, unhurried, and deeply human act of recording it. One yawn, one line, one quiet night at a time. In the vast, echoing halls of palaces, where long tables had once groaned under the weight of silver platters, roasted meats, and delicate pastries, the aftermath of a banquet told a story that no trumpet could announce, a story of stillness, emptiness, and the soft, almost imperceptible hum of history pausing for a breath. The candles burned low, their flames reflected in polished goblets now abandoned, casting trembling shadows that danced across the walls, lined with portraits of long-dead ancestors. Watching silently over the quiet aftermath, crumbs clung stubbornly to tablecloths, overturned chairs leaned at impossible angles, and the faint scent of wine mingled with dust and wax, a haunting reminder of revelry that had vanished as quickly as it arrived. Servants moved like shadows through the hallways, whispering to one another in voices barely above the crackle of dying embers, clearing trays with meticulous care, their movements precise, measured, almost ceremonial, as though even the mundane act of cleaning could honor the ghosts of celebration. Outside the windows, the gardens lay hushed beneath a waning moon, dew sparkling faintly on leaves that had witnessed countless feasts now reduced to quiet residue. In the corners of the room, the faint chill of neglect crept in, a reminder that even luxury could not prevent time from pressing forward, that the laughter and clinking of glasses belonged already to memory. Each chair, each plate, each small scrap of food left on the table became a monument to transient indulgence, a meditation on impermanence. And in this slow, almost hypnotic decay, there was a rhythm, a soft cadence that marked the passage of hours, the movement of shadows, and the inevitability of quiet. Footsteps echoed faintly in distant corridors, the subtle rustle of fabric accompanying the slow, careful work of tidying what had been left behind, while outside, the wind whispered through arches and colonnades, carrying faint traces of conversation, laughter, and music that had vanished long before the night had ended. Even the chandeliers, those grand, glimmering symbols of opulence, seemed subdued, their crystals dull in the dim candlelight, as though exhausted by the effort of illuminating human excess. And yet, in this hushed aftermath, there was beauty in monotony, the soft gleam of silverware, the quiet symmetry of cleared plates, the measured repetition of gestures performed without thought or audience, all combining to create a scene that could soothe the mind, like a lullaby composed of shadow and silence. The banquet had ended, but its memory lingered, fragile and imperceptible, resting in the interplay of candlelight, dust, and the subtle movements of those who remained to witness its slow fade. It was a meditation on the ordinary, the unnoticed, and the gentle decay of human effort, a quiet lesson in patience, in endurance, in the hypnotic cadence of life after spectacle. And in this muted space, time itself seemed to breathe, slowing, stretching, and folding into the silence, reminding all who lingered that even in grandeur, the world ultimately moves with a gentle, almost soporific rhythm, carrying the echoes of feasts gone cold into the vast night beyond the palace walls. Along the dimly lit corridors and echoing halls of palaces and estates, the soft, rhythmic tread of the night guard became the unseen heartbeat of a world suspended between duty and silence, a quiet measure of time that marked the passage of long, lonely hours when the rest of the household slept or lingered in dream. Boots scuffed against polished floors or gravel paths outside, each step deliberate, controlled, a monotony that could lull both guard and listener into a trance. The repetition as hypnotic as the tick of a distant clock, cloak brushing stone walls, keyring jingling faintly, lantern swaying to the cadence of measured footsteps. The guard's presence was both necessary and invisible, an unspoken promise of safety, a sentinel whose work existed in the delicate balance between watchfulness and boredom. The air was heavy with the scent of wax and dust, the chill of night seeping through cracks in windows and door frames, and the soft whistle of wind through arches accompanied the quiet patrol, a natural accompaniment to the man-made rhythm of his steps. Sometimes the guard would pause, listen, adjust a strap or glance at the moonlight spilling through high windows, noting with detached attention the minutiae of a world already asleep, from the tilt of a chair to the subtle movement of shadows across a tiled floor. The monotony of the rounds was both exhausting and strangely meditative. Each repetition allowed a mind to drift into reflection, memory, and the faint hum of history itself, as though the footsteps echoed not only through the hallways but across time. The watchman's eyes, trained to notice the faintest movement, softened when no threat appeared, and in that stillness, the world seemed to breathe around him, the rustle of leaves, the distant bark of a dog, the muted cries of owls, all forming a gentle symphony against which the dull repetition of duty became a kind of lullaby. Outside, the quiet streets and gardens mirrored the tranquility of the halls, lanterns casting pools of light across empty stone paths, fences, and gates, emphasizing the hush of a world in suspended motion. The guard's footsteps, steady and predictable, became a subtle marker of existence, a reassurance to those asleep that the fragile order of the household persisted, even in the absence of grandeur or spectacle. And while the monotony could numb the senses, it also offered a strange intimacy with the architecture, the furniture, the very pulse of the estate itself, teaching patience, attentiveness, and the hypnotic value of repetition. Each turn of a corridor, each pause at a doorway, each careful adjustment of keys and lantern flame contributed to the slow, meditative rhythm that carried the night forward. In the dim moonlight, reflecting off stone and polished wood, the world seemed to expand, holding its breath, moving only in the soft echo of footsteps and the occasional whisper of wind. In this suspended, deliberate quiet, the guard became both witness and participant in the understated poetry of existence, where survival, order, and time itself moved forward, not in haste or drama, but in the soft, soporific cadence of endless, watchful steps, a rhythm as gentle and hypnotic as the slow turning of history itself. When the candles burned low and the halls of palaces sank into stillness, the crowned figures who had carried the weight of kingdoms through the day finally surrendered to sleep, drifting into a quiet world of dreams that mirrored both their grandeur and their loneliness. Beds of silk and velvet, heavy curtains drawn against the chill of night, cradled kings and nobles in a softness their waking hours could not afford. Yet even in this comfort, the mind wandered through corridors of memory, responsibility, and reflection, tracing the intricate webs of power that bound them invisibly to the lives of countless subjects. The night was filled with subtle sounds, the gentle rustle of linens, the faint whisper of wind slipping through ornate window frames, the distant, measured echo of a guard's footsteps marking time in parallel rhythms. Within these chambers, the rulers dreamed of triumphs and defeats, of feasts enjoyed and battles fought, of decisions weighed and promises kept. Yet always beneath these visions ran a quiet undercurrent of human vulnerability, the awareness that even the mighty could not fully control the inexorable passage of time or the fragile hearts of those who depended on them. Shadows played across walls, adorned with portraits of ancestors, their painted eyes seeming to watch silently, perhaps judging, perhaps indifferent, as the sleeping monarchs shifted under blankets of velvet, their breaths slow, even, and hypnotic in their repetition. Outside, the gardens slept in mirror-like calm, fountains stilled, hedges unmoving in the cool embrace of moonlight, creating a suspended world that mirrored the stillness within, where every flicker of candlelight, every soft creak of a floorboard became amplified in the quietude, drawing attention to the serene monotony of existence behind the gilded walls. Even dreams followed a slow rhythm, whispers of diplomacy, quiet walks through echoing halls, small gestures of kindness or command, memories of voices long silenced, all folding together into a landscape of gentle reflection that was at once soporific and strangely comforting. Here, power was inseparable from patience, influence inseparable from monotony, and the rulers' inner lives were measured not in loud declarations or dramatic triumphs, but in subtle, repetitive movements of thought, ritual, and imagination, creating a mental landscape as quiet and deliberate as the slow rotation of chandeliers above. And as the hours passed, with the moon tracing its slow path across the night sky, the kings and nobles rested not only in body, but in the hypnotic cadence of existence itself, suspended between wakefulness and dream, a world of soft repetition, invisible guardians, and hushed spaces where the grand and the mundane intertwined. In this delicate balance of luxury, duty, and imagination, the sleepers became indistinguishable from the wandering, the patient, the humble, all human beings drifting through history, held together by the steady, soporific rhythm of life, one quiet heartbeat at a time. In the quiet corners of small villages and modest towns, where the clatter of industry had not yet intruded and the pace of life moved as slowly as the turning of the seasons, the weaver bent over his loom with hands that had learned both precision and patience through years of repetition. Each thread, thin and unassuming, passed through fingers that knew its tension, its texture, and its weight, weaving a fabric that would clothe bodies, decorate homes, or carry simple beauty into everyday life. The rhythmic clack of shuttle against warp became a gentle metronome, marking the hours in a pattern so hypnotic that the weaver often found his mind wandering into reflection, memory, or quiet dreams, even while the work continued. Dust motes floated lazily in the sunlight, streaming through narrow windows, catching the faint glimmer of threads as they intertwined into cloth, while the smell of untreated fibers and the faint warmth of the workshop created an atmosphere both mundane and meditative. Outside, the village moved slowly, children trailing along uneven paths, chickens pecking in the yard, smoke rising from chimneys that carried the scent of bread or stew. Yet inside, the weaver's loom contained the entire universe, a space where repetition became meditation, where monotony gave way to reflection, where every pull and push of the shuttle was both a literal and symbolic act of weaving together not just cloth, but life itself. The patterns were simple, yet perfect in their imperfection, irregular enough to reveal the human hand, deliberate enough to demonstrate skill honed over countless days of quiet, uninterrupted labor. The weaver's body swayed slightly with the rhythm of his task, eyes following the interlacing threads, mind tracing memories of past harvests, past winters, past conversations with neighbors long gone or distant, each thought falling gently into the rhythm of the loom. In this repetitive labor, there was a profound stillness, a kind of hypnotic serenity, as if the world outside the markets, the taxes, the unpredictable whims of nature had receded into insignificance, leaving only the quiet communion of human patience and the tangible, slowly forming fabric under skilled fingers. The hours passed in this gentle cadence, unnoticed but for the movement of sunlight across the floor, the occasional creak of wooden beams, and the soft, steady breathing of the weaver as he became almost one with his work. And when the last thread was tucked, when the piece was complete, it carried not only utility, but the imprint of human endurance, the rhythm of repetition, the quiet meditation of a life devoted to humble, persistent craft. In the calm and solitude of the workshop, the mundane became sacred, and the slow, deliberate act of weaving threads together became an almost soporific reflection of life itself, teaching that patience, care, and quiet consistency could create something lasting, beautiful, and human, even in a world defined by struggle, uncertainty, and the slow, hypnotic march of ordinary days. In the muted kitchens of small homes and village inns, where the air was thick with the scent of simmering broth and the faint tang of soot from wood-fired stoves, the rhythm of daily survival unfolded slowly, almost ceremoniously, as though each rising curl of smoke and every spoonful of soup were part of a quiet, meditative ritual. Women and men, young and old, moved in careful, deliberate gestures, stirring thick pots, scraping the sides for lingering flavor, and adjusting embers in the hearth so that heat spread evenly, coaxing nourishment from the simplest ingredients. Outside, the wind whispered through narrow streets and over tile rooftops, carrying the faint hum of distant chatter or the soft clatter of carts. But inside, the kitchen held a slower, more intimate pulse, the bubbling of liquid, the scrape of wooden spoons against worn bowls, the occasional hiss of steam escaping from the pot, each sound blending into a gentle, hypnotic cadence. The soup was often thin, a mixture of water, grains, and scraps of vegetables or meat. Yet, in its preparation and sharing, it became more than sustenance. It was a quiet act of care, a testament to endurance, a soft reminder that life, even when reduced to basic needs, could still contain dignity and connection. Children pressed small hands to the edges of tables, watching, learning the rhythm of tending, stirring, tasting, and passing bowls to neighbors, absorbing lessons in patience, modesty, and the quiet art of contributing to a collective survival. The smoke rising from chimneys curled lazily into the gray or gold light of morning, drifting across yards and fields, a visual reminder that life persisted in small, steady ways even when the world outside seemed indifferent or cruel. Every stirring motion, every scrape of the ladle, every careful transfer of food carried with it a rhythm almost soporific in its repetition, a meditative cadence that could slow the mind, focus attention, and soothe weariness. Meals were not hurried, nor were they celebrated with fanfare. They were taken in quiet acknowledgement of existence, of the effort to gather, prepare, and share, a silent ritual that marked the slow progression of day into night. The kitchen itself, with its soot-darkened walls, cast-iron pots, and simple wooden benches, became a sanctuary, a small world governed not by wealth or prestige, but by patience, cooperation, and the hypnotic repetition of small acts that sustained life. And when the bowls were emptied, the embers gently cooled, and the smoke thinned into the evening sky, the house seemed to exhale, settling into a lullaby of warmth, smell, and memory, a reminder that even the most ordinary acts, performed slowly and deliberately, could anchor human beings in a quiet rhythm, a soporific meditation on the simple persistence of life, the continuity of routine, and the understated poetry of surviving together, one small, deliberate gesture at a time. In the dusty squares and narrow lanes of small towns, where the sun rose pale and the wind stirred the fine grit of earth into lazy swirls, the market unfolded each morning like a slow, deliberate ritual, a quiet theater of human patience and repetition. Wooden stalls lined the streets, their simple frames supporting baskets of vegetables, grains, and rough fabrics, each item arranged with modest care, while vendors, hunched from long days of labor, repeated familiar motions with hands that had memorized every movement, weighing, measuring, exchanging coins, offering nods or faint smiles to neighbors and travelers alike. The air was a mixture of scents, damp earth, ripening produce, the faint tang of sweat and leather end. These combined with the soft murmur of conversation, the shuffle of boots on dusty ground, and the occasional cry of a child to create a rhythm that was neither urgent nor silent, but hypnotically steady. Buyers and sellers moved in slow arcs, circling stalls, inspecting the offerings with meticulous attention, repeating gestures born of necessity and habit, their motions a language of survival, patience, and quiet negotiation. Carts creaked under the weight of goods. Animals snorted softly as they were led along uneven paths, and the sun, climbing steadily overhead, cast long shadows across the market, emphasizing the gentle cadence of each repeated movement. Even the smallest transactions became microcosms of daily life. A handful of coins exchanged for a loaf of bread, a careful selection of apples placed in a cloth bag, the polite nod or quiet greeting accompanying every interaction. The repetition was unhurried but unbroken, a meditation on rhythm, endurance, and the ordinary persistence of life, teaching anyone present the subtle poetry of the mundane. Dust rose with each step, curling lazily in the sunlight, like invisible threads weaving together the stories of buyers, sellers, and passers-by. Every footprint, every shuffle, became part of a tapestry of movement and continuity that held the town together. Children trailed behind parents, learning the cadence of trade, the gentle rituals of waiting, asking, receiving, and carrying, their small voices punctuating the otherwise measured flow, adding faint staccatos to the lull of routine. And as the hours passed, the market gradually thinned, baskets emptied, carts moved toward home. The hum of voices diminished into soft murmurs, leaving the square itself coated with a thin layer of dust, the memory of human motion etched into its surface. In the quiet aftermath, one could almost sense the rhythm of the town settling into the pace of ordinary life, the hypnotic repetition of work, barter, and survival resonating through the air like a gentle, soporific song. And as the sun dipped toward the horizon, painting the dust in muted golds and soft shadows, retained the echo of its daily ritual, a quiet, meditative reminder that life's persistence often lay not in drama or spectacle, but in the steady, deliberate, and beautiful monotony of ordinary days, repeated over and over. As the last light of day slipped behind distant hills, the fields stretched into a quiet expanse of shadow and muted color, the tall stalks of grain swaying gently in the evening breeze, whispering secrets only the wind could hear, while the village beyond began to settle into the soft, deliberate rhythm of night. Farmers and laborers moved slowly across the land, finishing tasks with deliberate care, a final sweep of the barn floor, the stacking of tools beside worn wooden fences, the careful closing of gates to keep livestock safe until morning. Each motion was deliberate, repetitive, and soothing, a soft cadence that resonated with the subtle sounds of the world around them, the distant lowing of cattle, the occasional chirp of crickets, the whisper of leaves brushing against one another, and the rhythmic drip of dew forming as the temperature cooled and the air thickened with night's quiet embrace. Dust rose faintly from trodden paths and slowly settled again, creating a sense of impermanence, yet also continuity, a hypnotic reminder that life moved forward in soft, measured steps, neither hurried nor ignored. The sky, a canvas of fading orange and lavender, gradually deepened into navy and indigo, stars appearing one by one like scattered jewels, tiny witnesses to the quiet labor of human hands below, their light steady, eternal, and indifferent to the struggles of men and women who labored through centuries of hardship, hope, and endurance. The farmers paused at intervals to take in the cool air, to adjust straw hats, or to lean on tools while breathing in the faint smell of earth, sweat, and growing things, moments that were themselves acts of meditation, punctuating the otherwise hypnotic monotony of tending fields that demanded patience and vigilance. Children, reluctantly released from evening chores, trudged beside parents or sought shelter in simple homes, their small hands carrying remnants of tasks completed, their eyes reflecting both exhaustion and the gentle awe of a world unfolding around them at a pace that allowed observation, reflection, and quiet understanding. The rustle of animals returning to stables, the soft clink of iron latches, and the faint creak of gates closing were the last sounds to punctuate the workday, each note absorbed by the quieting land, the still air, and the stretching shadows, merging into a rhythm that could lull the mind toward rest if one allowed attention to settle upon it. As the moon rose pale and luminous, casting long, soft shadows over the fields, the laborers finally withdrew indoors, the lingering smell of soil and hay clinging to clothes and hair, and the land seemed to exhale, folding its movements into night, ready to repeat the slow, hypnotic pattern of sunrise to sunset again. Even in the absence of people, the fields retained a memory of human presence, furrows carved by careful hands, footprints pressed into earth, bundles of hay stacked in precise, methodical piles, and tools set down with deliberate care, all of which seemed to hum quietly in the darkness, a lullaby of ordinary, repetitive work that connected the present with the past and whispered promises of continuity into the night. The interplay of wind, shadow, and starlight created a subtle, cinematic beauty, where monotony itself became mesmerizing, and the hypnotic cadence of ordinary labor on earth, in rhythm with nature, offered a quiet, soporific reflection on the enduring simplicity and dignity of human existence, leaving the mind gently carried toward rest as nightfall draped the fields in a soft, unwavering embrace of calm and continuity. The road stretched endlessly, a ribbon of dusty earth curling through fields, hills, and forests, its monotony broken only by the occasional stone, puddle, or bending tree, and to the weary traveler, it became both a burden and a gentle meditation, a passage marked by repetition, rhythm, and the soft, hypnotic cadence of walking. Each step lifted feet heavy with miles already traveled, boots scraping lightly against the uneven surface, soles coated in fine grit that clung stubbornly to the leather and seeped between toes, a tactile reminder of distance and perseverance. The horizon shifted slowly with the movement of the sun, painting the sky in subtle gradients of ochre, lavender, and muted blues, colors that changed imperceptibly, inviting a quiet reflection as the traveler moved forward, step after step, without urgency. Occasionally, a bird would cry, a leaf would fall, or the wind would stir the long grass at the roadside. Each sound soft, gentle, and almost soporific, blending seamlessly into the ambient rhythm of the journey. Travelers passed no landmarks of excitement, no towering monuments, only the slow, measured presence of fences, hedgerows, and the occasional farmstead, each appearing and receding like actors in a play of soft repetition. Water bottles were lifted, sipped, and lowered, hats brushed against the sun, and packs shifted on tired shoulders. Minor adjustments, performed with care, precision, and a quiet attention that mirrored the larger pattern of human endurance. Dust rose in faint clouds with each footfall, then settled again, tracing the path with invisible memory. And the traveler felt a strange intimacy with the land, sensing its gentle undulations, the rhythm of its contours, and the slow, persistent movement of life that continued unobserved alongside the march of human feet. Shadows lengthened as the sun leaned toward the horizon, stretching across ruts and rocks, marking the slow progression of hours. And in the deepening light, the road seemed both infinite and intimate, a personal meditation written in dust, footprints, and the faint scent of earth. Every small motion, the brushing of a boot against gravel, the tilt of a head to shade eyes, the breath drawn deliberately in the warm air formed part of a hypnotic sequence that could quiet the mind, focus attention, and lull consciousness toward reflection. Villagers or farmhands might be glimpsed in the distance, tending fields or carrying baskets, their slow, repetitive motions harmonizing with the traveler's rhythm, merging distant lives into a quiet symphony of ordinary survival. As twilight deepened and the first stars pierced the sky, the road seemed to exhale, holding the traveler in its soft embrace. The horizon both invitation and reminder that every journey, no matter how long or uneventful, carried its own subtle beauty, its hypnotic meditation on endurance, patience, and the quiet poetry of moving steadily forward along paths lined not with grandeur, but with the gentle, soporific cadence of the world itself, one deliberate step at a time. As the traveler approached the edge of town, the warm, amber glow of the tavern spilled softly onto the cobblestone street, painting long, flickering shadows that invited weary feet and tired minds into a space both familiar and quietly hypnotic. A sanctuary of routine that existed in every small village and yet never revealed its full story to outsiders. The tavern door creaked gently as it opened, a sound that mingled with the faint scent of roasting meat, wood smoke, and stale ale, creating an atmosphere that was simultaneously grounding and soporific, a gentle balm for bodies and minds fatigued by miles of dusty road. Inside, the room hummed with low, steady rhythms, the scratch of a quill as a bartender marked tab lines, the soft clink of mugs on wooden tables, the murmur of conversation carried out in measured, deliberate tones, and the occasional laughter, careful and subdued, rippling through the space like a small wave of warmth against the cool, settling evening. Travelers, locals, and laborers alike moved in slow, predictable patterns, fetching drinks, exchanging coins, carrying food, or simply leaning back to let the fire's warmth reach stiff shoulders, creating a choreography of repetition so consistent that the room seemed to breathe along with the human rhythm, a living meditation in motion. The fire in the hearth crackled and popped, its orange light reflecting off polished wood, casting gentle flickers on faces lined by weather, age, or fatigue, while the shadows of beams and rafters stretched lazily across the floor, emphasizing the hypnotic steadiness of ordinary life carried forward with quiet grace. Outside, twilight gave way to deep indigo, stars just beginning to pierce the sky, and the sounds of night mingled with the muted hum of the tavern, a horse shifting in the stable, wind rustling along rooftops, the faint drip of water from gutters, all synchronized with the soft heartbeat of the room. Meals were served in modest portions, thick stew in wooden bowls, bread passed hand to hand, mugs of ale or tea shared quietly at tables. Each action repeated with careful precision, ritualized not for spectacle, but for continuity, sustenance, and comfort. Children of innkeepers or patrons, often hidden behind benches or nestled in corners, observed the flow of movement, absorbing the cadence of daily life and learning the gentle patience required to navigate a world governed not by drama, but by steady, deliberate repetition. In the dim, warm light, stories were told softly, anecdotes repeated from memory, jokes lingering only long enough to provoke a faint smile before quiet settled once more, reinforcing the hypnotic rhythm of the evening. By the time the fire burned low and the last embers glowed like sleepy eyes in the hearth, the tavern itself seemed to exhale, a space of gentle reflection, where the monotony of small acts pouring, serving, listening, speaking, observing, was elevated into a subtle, soporific meditation on human endurance, connection, and the quiet poetry embedded in ordinary evenings, leaving all who remained with a comforting, hypnotic sense of calm as night fully descended on the town outside. As night deepened and the town's quiet streets emptied, the traveler continued along the road, guided only by the soft glow of lanterns that dotted the path at irregular intervals, each one casting a warm, wavering circle of light that stretched over the dirt, illuminating small stones, ruts, and the occasional tuft of grass, while leaving the spaces between in gentle, protective shadow. The air was cool and still, carrying the faint sense of smoke from distant chimneys, damp earth, and the faint, lingering aroma of bread and stew from homes now shuttered against the night. Each step fell with a measured rhythm, boots brushing lightly against dust and gravel, heels lifting and falling in a cadence that echoed faintly against the soft hum of the world, a metronome marking the quiet passage of time for both mind and body. Lanterns swayed slightly with the breeze, casting dancing shadows along the fences and trees that lined the road, their flickering light creating a hypnotic pattern that invited reflection, contemplation, and the gentle drowsiness that comes from steady, repetitive motion. Occasionally, a distant dog barked, a faint owl cried, or the wind rustled leaves along hedgerows, all sounds absorbed by the tranquility of the night and seamlessly blending into the rhythm of walking, breath, and the subtle shift of weight from one foot to another. The traveler's shadow stretched and shifted with each lantern, elongated and short, thin and wide, a companion silently mirroring the deliberate progress forward, while the mind drifted between memory, observation, and quiet meditation, unhurried and uninterrupted by urgency. Trees arched above in a natural cathedral, their branches meeting over the road in muted, shadowed forms, filtering lantern light into scattered patterns that were both beautiful and soporific, like a slow symphony played in minor chords, soft and calming. Every step, every glance at the glowing lanterns became a part of a hypnotic ritual, the slow inhalation of cool air, the release of breath warmed by the body, the careful adjustment of pack straps, the occasional brushing of dust from boots, all performed with an attentive patience that elevated simple survival into contemplative art. Distant hills lay, in soft silhouettes against the night sky. The first stars glittering faintly, as if approving the quiet, repeated passage of the lone traveler beneath their eternal gaze. The lanterns, spaced far enough apart to create anticipation, became markers not just of physical progress, but of temporal rhythm, intervals to measure distance, time, and endurance. Each glow, a gentle punctuation in the otherwise seamless stretch of road. And as the traveler moved steadily, immersed in the hypnotic pattern of light, shadow, and repetition, the world seemed to slow. The road stretching infinitely yet intimately, every motion deliberate, every breath measured, every step a small meditation on continuity, patience, and the soporific beauty of life quietly unfolding, one lantern-lit moment at a time, carrying the mind into a peaceful, reflective cadence that could lull even the most restless soul toward rest and the soft embrace of night. By the time the traveler reached the inn, nestled at the edge of town, the world had already quieted to a near hypnotic hush. The soft patter of distant rain on rooftops, the occasional creak of timber settling, and the gentle murmur of voices from within the inn blending into a slow, meditative rhythm that seemed to stretch time itself. Inside, the common room glowed with the warm, flickering light of a hearth, casting soft shadows across rough-hewn wooden tables and benches, while the smell of damp coats, spilt ale, and simmering stew mingled into a faintly comforting perfume that spoke of routine, patience, and quiet endurance. Travelers and locals alike spoke in low tones, careful not to disturb the delicate cadence of evening. Stories repeated, news whispered, laughter muted to occasional soft chuckles that rippled through the room like gentle waves across still water. The innkeeper moved in slow, deliberate motions, tending to mugs, ladling broth into bowls, polishing wooden surfaces, each gesture repeated so often that it had become instinctive, ritualized, and soothing to watch. A demonstration of ordinary life elevated into hypnotic art. Lanterns hung from beams and walls, swinging slightly as the fire's warmth caused air to move, their flickering light painting faces with a gentle chiaroscuro, revealing lines etched by years of labor, smiles that had grown quiet, and eyes that reflected both fatigue and calm observation. Footsteps along the wooden floorboard, the occasional scrape of chair legs, the soft clink of spoons against bowls, all contributed to a rhythm that was neither hurried nor deliberate in a dramatic sense, but hypnotic in its consistency, a subtle lullaby for the mind and body alike. Outside, wind whispered through alleys, rain pattered on cobblestones, and the distant cry of an owl punctuated the evening. Yet inside the inn, these sounds blended seamlessly with the quiet rituals of service, conversation, and consumption, each ordinary act a meditation on continuity and calm. Patrons leaned back in chairs, slowly sipping warm drinks, savoring every morsel, and watching shadows dance across walls, allowing the monotony of repeated patterns, the pouring, the stirring, the serving to lull thought into soft reflection. Children tucked into corners or leaning quietly against parents absorbed the rhythm of adult behavior, learning patience, observation, and the subtle poetry of repetition, while outside, the moon rose pale and luminous over the town, casting silver light through windows onto tables and faces alike. Even in whispered conversations, the tone of voices, measured and calm, mirrored the soporific pattern of the inn, words repeated, advice given quietly, greetings exchanged gently, creating a continuum that grounded the space in slow, deliberate human rhythm. By the time the fire dimmed to glowing embers and patrons began to retreat to rooms above, the inn seemed to exhale with them, holding the echo of footsteps and the hypnotic sway of candle and lantern light, a living testament to the quiet, soporific beauty of ordinary nights, where every gesture, every whisper, every flicker of light contributed to the calm, steady pulse of life, soothing minds and bodies alike into gentle, reflective rest. When the inn finally grew still and the last patrons retreated to upstairs rooms, the town outside seemed to exhale, folding into a delicate quiet that made every cobblestone, every shuttered window, and every wrought iron lantern seem conscious of the hypnotic rhythm of night. Moonlight spilled across uneven streets, illuminating puddles left by an earlier rain, reflecting faint silhouettes of shuttered homes and casting long, soft shadows that swayed gently with the occasional breeze, creating a subtle, cinematic movement that could lull a wandering mind toward reflection, meditation, or sleep. The occasional clink of a loose stone underfoot, the soft drip of water from gutters, and the faint rustle of leaves in the wind punctuated the stillness, forming a gentle pattern of sound and silence that echoed the town's slow heartbeat. Footsteps rare, measured, deliberate crossed the empty squares, either from a lone traveler seeking rest or from the watchman making his quiet rounds, boots striking cobblestones in a steady, hypnotic cadence, the rhythm itself becoming almost a lullaby for the sleeping town. Windows reflected the pale light of the moon, catching glimmers of candlelight still flickering faintly in homes where a late reader, a tired parent, or a solitary scribe lingered over quiet tasks, the repetition of their small actions linking human presence to the wider, slow-moving rhythm of the town. Chimneys exhaled thin trails of smoke, curling lazily toward the indigo sky, carrying faint scents of wood, stew, and the warmth of hearth fires, while the distant cry of an owl punctuated the air, a solitary note in a symphony of night that was measured, deliberate, and hypnotically calming. Every shutter, every fence, every stone in the streets seemed to absorb and reflect the slow movement of time. And even in silence, the town's history whispered through its architecture, its streets, and the echoes of footsteps long gone, reminding any attentive observer of the soft cadence that underlies everyday life. The cobblestones themselves, worn smooth over decades of repeated passage, told stories not of grandeur, but of ordinary existence, each step leaving an impermanent imprint, each night dissolving the day into memory, repetition, and quiet reflection. Trees at the edge of the square swayed gently, casting long, undulating shadows over doorways and narrow alleys, and the faint flicker of a distant lantern created a visual rhythm that matched the pulse of night itself. In this serene, soporific space, time felt both infinite and immediate, allowing the mind to drift alongside shadows, moonlight, and the measured echo of human presence, discovering beauty in monotony, meditation in repetition, and comfort in the quiet endurance of ordinary life. By the time the moon reached its zenith and the air cooled, the town, streets, and cobblestones rested as though cradled by centuries of quiet continuity. Every repeated action, whispered word, and measured step woven into the hypnotic tapestry of human existence, leaving a lingering sense of calm, reflection, and the gentle passage of night that could carry even the most restless soul into a deep, tranquil sleep. Before the first sounds of human activity disturbed the world, the countryside lay in a delicate, suspended hush, bathed in the soft, muted glow of dawn that stretched across rolling fields, gentle hills, and sleepy farmhouses. The horizon blushed with pale pinks, silvers, and faint golden streaks, colors so subtle they seemed to seep slowly into consciousness rather than announce themselves, inviting a quiet, contemplative awareness of the day about to unfold. Dew clung to grass blades and spider webs, each droplet catching the early light like a miniature prism, reflecting a universe in miniature that few paused to notice, yet which carried an almost soporific beauty for the attentive mind. Farm animals stirred quietly, hens pecking slowly at scattered grain, cows lifting heavy heads to gaze lazily toward the soft light, and the occasional lowing or bleat punctuating the stillness in measured intervals, establishing a rhythm that harmonized with the slow rise of the sun. The air carried the faint, earthy scent of damp soil, hay, and distant smoke from chimneys of early risers tending fires for breakfast. Subtle smells that grounded perception in the ordinary yet extraordinary continuity of rural life. Roads glimmered faintly with residual moisture, winding gently through fields and pastures, guiding the eye and the mind along a path of repetition and calm, while scattered fences, hedgerows, and solitary trees added visual punctuation, casting elongated shadows that slowly retracted as the sun ascended. Birds stirred gradually, their first calls tentative and soft, rising into a gentle chorus that echoed across hills and meadows, a hypnotic accompaniment to the repetition of morning movements, the slow lifting of buckets, the measured strokes of hoes and rakes, the careful tending of livestock, and the quiet preparation of homes for the day. Even human movement was subdued, deliberate, and rhythmic, a meditation on patience and endurance as hands repeated habitual tasks, feet followed well-worn paths, and eyes scanned familiar landscapes that seemed both eternal and intimate. Mist hovered low over fields, curling like a soft veil around fence posts and haystacks, creating a cinematic quality that transformed ordinary farmland into a visual meditation on time, memory, and continuity. Each inhalation of the crisp morning air, each subtle adjustment of a hand or foot, each tilt of the head to shield the eyes from the nascent sun became part of a hypnotic cadence, a gentle lullaby of existence itself, blending the animate and inanimate into a slow, reflective rhythm. Even in the absence of dramatic events, the countryside conveyed lessons in endurance, patience, and the hypnotic beauty of repetition. Life progressed quietly, steadily, and predictably, a soft pulse that connected all things to the slow, inexorable march of time. As the first workers emerged fully into light, carrying tools, water, or provisions along winding paths, the rhythm of human effort blended seamlessly with the quiet cadence of nature, creating a harmonious soporific symphony in which every repeated motion, every soft sound, and every gentle reflection offered a meditation on the enduring simplicity and understated poetry of ordinary life at dawn. In this tranquil, cinematic morning, the mind could drift gently with the contours of land, the rise of the sun, the movements of animals, and the repetition of human habit, discovering a peaceful calm that prepared the soul for the day ahead while carrying it toward quiet reflection, meditation, and sleep in the soft embrace of dawn. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across the fields, the farmer rose with quiet determination, moving through the morning air with a rhythm born of decades of repetition, a measured sequence of gestures, each performed with careful attention to detail, patience, and endurance. His boots pressed softly against damp earth, leaving faint impressions that would fade beneath the day's activity. And the scent of soil, hay, and dew mingled with the faint smoke from the hearth, grounding each movement in a familiar and comforting sensory rhythm. With hands accustomed to both strength and subtlety, he checked fences, adjusted gates, and assessed the state of crops with meticulous care, each action following naturally from the last, forming a hypnotic cadence that marked the passage of time and the silent unfolding of the day. Chickens pecked lazily at scattered grain, cows lifted heads and swayed gently in the breeze, while the distant lowing of livestock punctuated the farmer's steady movements, creating a quiet symphony of sound that blended seamlessly with the soft rustle of leaves and the whisper of wind across the fields. Tools were lifted, swung, and replaced in repetitive patterns, each motion both functional and meditative, connecting body and mind to the slow, deliberate rhythm of survival, productivity, and ordinary life. Every measured step along furrows and pathways, every careful glance at the sky, every adjustment of soil or straw became a meditative act, teaching patience, endurance, and the subtle poetry hidden in routine. The sun continued its gentle ascent, casting long shadows that slowly shifted across pastures, barns, and garden plots, emphasizing the hypnotic progression of hours marked not by dramatic events, but by repetition, continuity, and deliberate attention to detail. Children, often trailing behind or assisting, absorbed these lessons unconsciously, imitating gestures, watching rhythms, learning the quiet language of work, repetition, and connection to the land. Even the soundscape contributed to a meditative cadence, the soft thump of boots on packed earth, the faint scrape of rake against soil, the occasional clatter of buckets or tools, all woven together into a subtle auditory pattern that encouraged reflective thought, calm awareness, and gentle drowsiness for any observer. Lunch preparations proceeded slowly in small kitchens near the fields, with bread cut, water poured, and soup stirred. The movements synchronized with the natural pace of the morning, emphasizing both ritual and necessity, sustaining body and mind in perfect harmony with the day's progression. Mist still lingered in low areas, curling around fence posts and haystacks, creating a visual rhythm that mirrored the farmer's movements, while birds continued to call in measured, repetitive patterns, adding to the hypnotic environment of work and observation. By midday, the farm stood as a tapestry of human effort and natural continuity, fences maintained, animals tended, crops observed, and the landscape itself seeming to breathe in alignment with the rhythm of labor. In these quiet, repeated gestures lay the understated elegance of life, a soporific meditation on endurance, patience, and the delicate beauty of ordinary work, where every motion, every glance, and every breath contributed to a slow, hypnotic cadence that could calm the mind, steady the heart, and lull both worker and observer into a reflective, serene state, fully aware of the continuity of life, time, and human perseverance. By the time the sun reached its zenith, the fields lay bathed in a warm, muted light, the gentle shimmer of heat rising from soil and grass, softening the edges of everything in sight, creating a tranquil, soporific atmosphere where even the faintest movement seemed measured and deliberate. The farmer, still moving with the quiet rhythm of morning labor, paused occasionally to wipe sweat from a brow, adjust a tool, or glance across rows of crops, his movements deliberate, repetitive, and almost meditative, perfectly in harmony with the slow, consistent cadence of the day. Livestock grazed lazily, their lowing and soft chewing adding subtle layers to the gentle soundscape of the countryside, while chickens scratched at the earth in small arcs, producing a hypnotic, repetitive pattern that merged seamlessly with the farmer's motions. Shadows fell softly and shifted imperceptibly over the furrows, fence posts, and scattered tools, marking the passage of hours in a visual rhythm that mirrored the measured, soporific cadence of work. Sweat, soil, and dust mingled faintly in the warm air, grounding every motion in tactile and sensory reality, while distant hills and hedgerows remained steadfastly patient, silent witnesses to the repetitive acts that carried life forward in ordinary, enduring patterns. Even the smallest gestures, the careful placement of a hoe, the repeated patting of soil around a newly planted seed, the lifting and lowering of a bucket took on a meditative quality, each action anchoring mind and body to the slow, hypnotic rhythm of ordinary survival. Birds moved lazily from branch to branch, wings fluttering in gentle arcs, their songs quiet and deliberate, while insects hovered intermittently, contributing subtle punctuation to the vast, soft symphony of mid-afternoon stillness. The farmer's children, if present, moved in tandem with the rhythm of work, imitating gestures, fetching tools, and carrying water in measured, careful motions, each act reinforcing the hypnotic repetition of life, the continuity of family, and the slow transmission of practical knowledge from one generation to the next. Sunlight filtered through the leaves of scattered trees, casting dappled, ever-shifting patterns across the soil, creating visual harmony with the repeated motions of planting, tending, and observing, emphasizing the gentle, soporific beauty of the ordinary. Lunch was prepared quietly in a nearby kitchen, bread sliced, water poured, and simple food eaten with slow, deliberate movements, marking the midpoint of the day, a pause in the soft cadence that allowed mind and body to reflect upon the repetition and continuity of the work itself. Even in the absence of excitement or drama, the day carried a hypnotic allure, the steady repetition of labor, the measured passage of light and shadow, and the unhurried presence of life in all its ordinary detail created a visual and auditory meditation on endurance, patience, and the understated poetry of human effort. By the time the sun began its descent, casting longer shadows across the furrows. The hypnotic rhythm of the day had embedded itself into the mind, leaving an awareness of continuity, reflection, and calm, a soft preparation for the evening that would follow, in which all repetitive actions, measured sounds, and subtle movements would once again lull the world toward rest, sleep, and quiet reflection under the cinematic canopy of sky, land, and enduring human habit. As the sun dipped lower, painting the fields with muted gold and amber hues, the farmer and his family moved through the crops in slow, deliberate motions, harvesting with a rhythm that had been honed over countless days of repetition. Each gesture precise, careful, and hypnotically calming. The sickle swung in measured arcs, cutting stalks of grain that rustled softly in reply, falling in orderly bundles onto the earth, while hands worked steadily to tie sheaves and arrange them for collection, forming a pattern of repetition that mirrored the soft, natural cadence of the evening. Dust rose faintly with each step, lingering in the warm, filtered sunlight, creating halos around the movements of laborers and casting long shadows that stretched across furrows, fences, and distant hills, emphasizing the gentle passage of time. The air smelled faintly of hay, dry earth, and sun-warmed crops, mingling with the sweat of laboring bodies, an aroma that grounded both mind and body in the ordinary yet profound rhythm of survival. Children assisted quietly, bending to tie smaller sheaves or carry bundles to the edges of fields, their actions deliberate and slow, learning patience and endurance in the hypnotic repetition of labor that had sustained generations. Crows occasionally cawed in the distance, and the faint rustle of leaves in scattered trees punctuated the quiet symphony of motion and sound, adding subtle counterpoints to the soft, steady pattern of harvesting. Every repeated gesture, the swing of a tool, the bend to pick stalks, the careful placement of a sheaf became a meditation, a soporific cadence linking body, mind, and environment into one continuous rhythm. As the shadows lengthened and the golden light deepened into soft orange, the farmer paused occasionally, hands resting on the tool handle, gaze sweeping across the fields, taking in the repetition of shapes, colors, and movements that stretched to the horizon, a visual and mental pattern that reinforced the hypnotic serenity of the moment. The slow procession of workers, moving in tandem with the light, the land, and each other, became almost a choreography of endurance, quiet reflection, and continuity, with the repeated sounds of rustling stalks, soft footsteps, and faint laughter blending seamlessly into a calming rhythm. Even the preparation for evening stacking sheaves, arranging tools, tending to animals followed the same deliberate sequence, reinforcing a sense of order, predictability, and comfort, as though the world itself acknowledged the soothing power of routine. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting deep shadows and cooling the air, the fields lay transformed, orderly, harvested, and calm, reflecting the cumulative rhythm of labor performed with patience and care. In the stillness that followed, the gentle motion of wind across stubble, the soft cooing of distant birds, and the residual warmth of the day's sunlight created a cinematic tableau of quiet continuity, allowing both mind and body to absorb the hypnotic beauty of repetition, the understated poetry of ordinary life, and the calm assurance that, as always, the earth would endure. The labor would continue, and the rhythm of work, patience, and reflection would carry the human spirit gently into night. As the last light of the day melted behind distant hills and the fields cooled under the soft embrace of twilight, the farm and its surroundings exhaled a collective sigh of calm, the slow rhythm of labor giving way to the gentle cadence of rest, reflection, and quiet contemplation. The farmer walked slowly along the rows of harvested grain, boots pressing softly into the earth, while the children and any remaining helpers gathered tools, stacked sheaves, and led livestock into pens with deliberate, measured motions, each gesture part of a hypnotic, comforting routine that marked the close of the day. Smoke from hearths curled lazily into the darkening sky, mingling with the faint scent of damp earth, creating an invisible lullaby of familiarity that settled over the landscape like a soft blanket. The air, cool and still, carried subtle sounds, the occasional lowing of cows, the distant hoot of an owl, the soft swish of wind across fence posts and fields, and the rustle of leaves stirred gently by evening breezes, each note perfectly synchronized with the fading light. Lanterns were lit in cottages and barns, casting warm, flickering circles of amber light that reflected softly on the faces of tired laborers, illuminating lines carved by long days, gentle smiles of satisfaction, and eyes heavy with fatigue, yet softened by the familiarity of routine. Children, weary from the repetition of daily work, were guided to beds or simple mats near the farmhouse, their movements slow and drowsy. The subtle rituals of washing hands, brushing hair, and settling beneath blankets performed with careful, hypnotic precision that mirrored the steady rhythm of the surrounding world. The farmer, after ensuring all animals were safely in pens and tools secured, paused one last time to take in the fields, rows of harvested grain glinting faintly under the moonlight, long shadows merging with soft mists rising from damp earth, a tableau of order, continuity, and calm that reflected the cumulative efforts of the day. Each motion of the evening, the closing of gates, the gentle nudge of animals, the soft step across porches and paths was performed with mindful repetition, a meditation on endurance, patience, and the understated poetry of ordinary life. Even in darkness, the landscape maintained a hypnotic cadence. Moonlight pooled in hollows, shadows stretched across furrows, and the faint rustle of trees whispered continuity and reassurance, teaching the mind to rest, the body to relax, and the spirit to absorb the gentle rhythm of life's ordinary cycles. By the time the night reached its deepest point, the farm, fields, and surrounding village lay quiet, still, and almost timeless. Each repeated action, each habitual gesture, and each subtle sound combining into a soft, soporific symphony that invited reflection, meditation, and sleep. In this serene, cinematic moment, the mind could drift with shadows, moonlight, and the rhythm of the earth itself, experiencing the hypnotic beauty of repetition, the continuity of generations, and the gentle, unassuming grace of ordinary life, all converging to carry every observer and laborer alike into a deep, restful, and tranquil night.